Hello, I'm Nicola Bingham from the British Library, and the title of my presentation is Policies and Processes for Ingesting WebRecorder WARCS into the UK Web Archive. Along with many other web archiving institutions, the UK Web Archive is developing the capability to archive complex web content such as video, audio, social media, and various types of immersion formats. One of the most promising tools for capturing this content is WebRecorder. To this end, the web archiving team have been experimenting with WebRecorder in its different iterations: the WebRecorder desktop app, which is now deprecated, the integrated hosting service Conifer from Rhizome, and the new archive webpage Chrome browser extension. While the archiving capabilities of WebRecorder are well documented and understood, the process and policies of ingesting externally crawled WARCs into a national collection is something that has had little attention and is something that we've been grappling with at the library over the past couple of years. This represents a diversion from our usual workflow in that our technical infrastructure incorporates Heritrix as the crawling engine, managed by our curation software, the annotation curation tool, and with domain crawls set up also using Heritrix on an annual basis. So far, WebRecorder isn't part of the core infrastructure. This presentation will examine these process and policy considerations through the lens of two recent case studies. Firstly, a website with a large number of embedded YouTube videos, and secondly, websites and social media content archived by a third party and donated to us by the Imperial War Museum. The first case study is the Man on a Beach website, which contains over 1,300 filmed interviews with members of the public who respond to the question, "What does the beach mean to you?" The website contains personal testimonies and unique qualitative findings that constitute a rich seam of oral history, and therefore is a valuable acquisition from the library's point of view. However, the website is challenging to archive as it contains embedded YouTube videos as well as photo galleries on Facebook. Initially, we crawled this website with our usual workflow, the Heritrix web crawler, driven by our curation software. But as expected, we didn't capture the embedded YouTube videos or the photo galleries. Hence, we experimented with the WebRecorder desktop app. And this work has been done by my colleague, Carlos Lelquez Rarugal, the Assistant Web Archivist at the UK Web Archive. Many people will understand that the most fail-safe way to archive YouTube videos is via their canonical URL on the YouTube platform. However, this isn't always adequate if the context of the page where the embed sits is critical, as in our case. It's not always possible to connect up the video to the page that has the video embedded on it. And we observed that in this case, on the website page, there was a holding image of the video with a link to it. However, when that video is played, it changes to an autoplay URL with additional parameters. In fact, several URLs are generated by playing the video, including those referring to the homepage, the static embedded URL, the video link when played, and the video on the YouTube site. Other challenges were the YouTube videos were delivered in sections and served from a Google Video Content Distribution Network. Plus, the recorded videos consisted of 8 separate fuzzy YouTube URLs that make up the video. So, as I said, we didn't successfully archive the videos this way with the WebRecorder desktop app, but we did have better luck with the WebRecorder Chrome extension by recording the homepage of the website, playing the video from there, and then patching the capture with the actual video on the YouTube page. Therefore, a successful capture in this case means allowing the video to play interrupted from beginning to end so that all the video segments are captured. And we're not sure yet if scrubbing through the video would work as a means to speed up capture, and we hadn't managed to get the WebRecorder autopilot option to play either on this site. And so obviously one of the issues we have is that capturing the videos is in real time. We have to play them through to archive them, which is very resource intensive. And this is just one website that we're archiving amongst many. So we're looking at automating this process or semi-automating it. And one intermediate step towards automation may be to work in Excel or Google Sheets, i.e. to extract all the YouTube URLs from the website, add them to the Excel spreadsheet, convert them to the autoplay versions and of the embedded URLs that the website tries to look for. Another way forward is that we have been looking at UPath, which is a robotic process automation technology, which we've used in another context in web archiving, with the aim of scaling up the archiving tasks. And we've also yet to have a look at browser tricks as well, but we will be doing so. So for the meantime, we're continuing to manually archive videos while looking at these automated options, but this remains a work in progress. And really, this is just all to illustrate the resource that is taken to archive this one website. I'll now talk about the second case study that we looked at. And for this acquisition, we received a donation of archived websites from the Imperial War Museum, consisting of their main website, 10 microsites and 4 social media collections related to the 14 to 18 Now World War I Centenary Art Commissions project. The IWM had contracted independent researcher and web archivist Anissa Hawes to archive the websites with WebRecorder and wanted to deposit them at the British Library, both as an insurance policy for their long-term preservation and to make the websites accessible to researchers, as they didn't have their own access platform at the time. And while we often partner with advisory curators and subject specialists to build collections, we hadn't integrated externally created web archives into our collection before. The problem is not primarily a technical one, as we're able to ingest and manage WARCs, but rather a legislative one. Due to our non-print legal deposit legislation, there are restrictions not only about what is in scope, but how we carry out the web archiving process. For example, we can only archive websites from an IP address dedicated for the purpose of making requests under the legal deposit regulation. So the spirit of the law is that the crawler should be identified as originating from a legal deposit library. And in practice, this means that web-hosted tools such as Conifer can't be used for legal deposit collecting, as the IP address through which the activity takes place isn't identified as a library's. However, in this case, the legal deposit issue was negated as it constituted a voluntary deposit, and we worked closely with the IWM and the archivist Anissa to document all aspects of the acquisition process, including information about third-party rights clearance, capture information, and guidance notes. A detailed manifest listing the archived content was provided with the WARCs. For each WARC file delivered was accompanied by 3 PDFs. Firstly, a collection cover that included basic metadata and information to support cataloguing. Secondly, a visual guide to the collections or a guided tour to navigate the website. And thirdly, notes or annotations to accompany the visual guides, giving instructions for a user to navigate the site. And one of the reasons why this documentation is important is that it describes any gaps in the archived websites. And it also explains the navigation route that the archivist had taken through the websites in order to record them. Other considerations are that we need to verify what the WARCs contain before ingesting them into our collection. This is why we can't accept voluntary donations of WARC files from external sources without this prior discussion and the provision of metadata ahead of archiving. Other considerations are that if any content is behind a login, the recording process mustn't capture usernames or passwords, and it mustn't be possible to recover them from the archived content. Many websites embed social media content into their pages, so any crawler is likely to gather this content as well as the website. And the WebRecorder team advise setting up dedicated social media accounts before archiving them, rather than using your own social media accounts or logins. In terms of verifying the content of WARCs, WebRecorder has a standard API to pull information in about what has been crawled, which could be passed on to the users. The WARC record contains a plain text file which we could extract. In addition, the new WAC format contains an index file which lists a CDX index of the contents of the file. In terms of the acquisition of externally generated WARCs, this was an entirely new process for the library, requiring a bespoke solution. The IWM didn't have the resource to provide the content via an FTP site of their own. Therefore, the library set up an FTP service with approximately 1 terabyte of storage. The IWM were able to transfer 199 gigabytes of WARCs onto the library's FTP site, and we were able to download the WARCs in batches from here to our storage cluster. But there was an additional element of complexity in that the library FTP service resides on a Microsoft Windows file system, meaning the WARCs then had to be FTP'd onwards to a Linux server and then onto our intermediary distributed storage platform before finally being uploaded to our Hadoop storage cluster. Overnight, we run the automated indexing processes, which index the WARCs files so that they can be viewed on our open and reading room services the next day. The contents of the WARCs will also be indexed into the Solus search service, but this doesn't happen automatically at the moment or very quickly. We're also developing similar processes and policies for acquiring and uploading WARCs archived by British Library staff members when using WebRecorder. The WARCs can be transferred to the library network, and the manual process of transferring this content onto the Web Archive Hadoop cluster is repeated. We've standardized our directory layout such that the collection of archive material is within a single directory with a name to reflect that content. Within this directory, a README file is saved recording the information about the archived website, who performed the WebRecorder archiving, when, under what access terms. This is done because we need to record the provenance of the archived web content. This work generates a new requirement in that we can differentiate donated content from the content crawled under legal deposit. And I must say that the storage and transfer and indexing of the WARC files is credited to my colleague Gil Hogarth at the library. In terms of making the content available, we need to create records for the websites and social media channels in the annotation curation tool so that the web content can be browsable and searchable by users in our access systems. Through the annotation curation tool, we can also control the flag that passes the website for open access through the UK Web Archive interface. The PDF documents written by the archivist containing the contextual information, the notes and the navigation guides have been deposited in the British Library repository, which will hopefully enhance the user's experience of the archived websites, providing more contextual information. And those records have actually been assigned a DOI. The IWM websites are also visible in the First World War Centenary collection on the UK Web Archive website. We're seeing an increased interest in and take up of WebRecorder among our curators and subject specialists, and even those people who haven't previously worked with web archiving. And this is due to WebRecorder's capability of achieving high fidelity captures of challenging websites, the fact that it is a standalone open source application or extension that's very easy and intuitive to use. And this has many benefits for the Web Archive. Not only can more technically challenging websites be captured, but it has the potential to democratize collection building in that a more diverse range of individuals and communities can contribute archived web content, thus making the collection more representative. However, in the context of a national library archiving at scale under the auspices of non-print legal deposit regulations, we need policies to embed and legitimise the process and to validate the content that we're ingesting. The practical operation of WebRecorder, where we do not otherwise have an agreement to archive in place, needs to be within the terms of the non-print legal deposit regulation. This is scrutinised by the Joint Committee on Legal Deposits, the body which supports cooperation between library and publisher representatives to ensure effective implementation of regulations for deposit. And this negotiation isn't a quick process. It will take a lot of discussion among all parties. Under our regulatory framework, any request for delivery of a work must be made by the deposit library by means of a web harvester from one or more IP addresses dedicated for the purpose of web archiving. As a minimum requirement, therefore, any web harvesting tool must be from an IP address associated with a deposit library. For non-print legal deposit crawls, we currently make the crawler declare themselves as NPLD in two ways. We pass a user agent string with every request that makes it clear it's us, and we crawl from an IP address which is registered in DNS as belonging to us. And so the problem with the newer decentralized tools is that we need the requests to come from a centralized point, a small fixed range of IP addresses rather than directly from everyone's desktops. Just using the user agent and allowing people to archive pages from their own machines is unlikely to be acceptable within the spirit of the regulations. In thinking of ways to resolve this, we are reaching out to the WebRecorder team, and one option may be to modify the archive webpage extension so that it routes all requests via a UK Web Archive proxy, although we understand that this might cause capture problems because the fidelity of the crawling may not be as good when the requests are being routed by a proxy. We also still need to engineer a solution that will not compromise the security of the library's networks. But at the moment, these are quite academic considerations whilst we explore the options. In conclusion, this presentation has touched on some of the issues involved in using third-party web archiving tools in the context of a national library under the auspices of non-print legal deposit regulations. The technical challenges are important. However, the policy point is arguably the more important part of the implementation. For example, how do new web harvesting tools designed to be democratic interact with legal deposit frameworks which assume that the collecting will be carried out by a nominated institution? Also, there's a point where this more detailed web harvesting has crossovers with archives more generally. For example, the need for documenting collecting practice, recording provenance, and being mindful of personal data, for example, in social media feeds. So finally, I'd like to thank the WebRecorder team, who are very open to listening to their user community requirements and issues. We try to participate in the WebRecorder community calls, and the project certainly operates to a model of being led by the user requirements. I'd also like to thank my colleagues helping working on this project. Carlos Gill, Anissa, and also the team at Conifer and Rhizome as well. Thanks very much for listening to the presentation, and I look forward to the discussion in the conference session.